Are you interested in angels, demons, ghosts, spirits, and monsters? Are you curious about their origins, influence, and how to protect against the unknown? If so, then welcome to Southern Demonology, the podcast that explores all of this and more. Hello, all, and welcome back to the Southern Demonology podcast. As always, I am your friendly neighborhood ancient demonologist, JJ. Today's episode is the second and final part of my interview with Chelsea from Team Haunt Paranormal. I have to say that this is one of the most fun interviews I have ever conducted, and she gave such informative answers all the way throughout. I know you'll enjoy listening to it just as much as I did having the conversation. Now, there's one other item I wanted to bring up before delving straight into the interview itself. You may have noticed, hopefully, but I have finally made the transition to full video podcasts, and you can find those both on YouTube and Spotify. Of course, the podcast itself will always be available through audio only, so never fear on that front. Now, I'll be the first to admit that I have a face for radio and a voice for the newspapers, but if this helps to bring a new dimension to Southern Demonology, then I'm all for it. I've worked hard to make sure that the same level of quality is brought to both the audio and video portions. So please subscribe to the YouTube channel and check it out if you haven't already. With all that said, let's continue the interview with Chelsea from Team Haunt Paranormal. Do you believe that there are entities out there that want to be seen and others that never do?
Okay, I like this question. I think spirits actually just have different capabilities of manifesting. I assume they're just like people, that some spirits are more outgoing than others and some may be more inclined to interact. I don't believe, just because of my experience at different venues with totally different, seemingly very different haunting types, I don't think they all can manifest the same way.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't assume a level playing field across the board. So, honestly, because we're dealing with the unknown, the least amount of assumptions that you have going into it would make the most amount of sense. But
Yes.
maybe that's just me.
I agree.
When do you personally draw the line between a spiritual encounter, a mental suggestion, and pure folklore?
That's an intriguing question. And I think for us, it's what we can measure. If we come into places and everyone has opinions on who their ghosts are and the lore in the town, you can usually pick out the lore, right? If you can't historically document it, it's lore, just like the ghost hunting is. Like, we have to really be able to put out something measured. So for me, the line is, can we measure it? And we also have to block out, kind of leaning to what you just said last time. We want to hear all the history of a venue because we want to honor the venues that we go to and the people, allowing us into the property. We try and be really respectful, but we try not to put out anything we can't measure. You can tell me your ghost name is Matilda, but unless a ghost comes out and says, "Hi, I'm Matilda," and even then I have no proof that, what kind of spirit it is or who Matilda was or if it's really a Matilda. So we try and go into everything with a real neutral frame of mind, curious about the history and the lore, and we want to share that with the public because that makes it fun. But we don't want to put out as paranormal evidence anything that can't be measured.
Let's say that you've been invited to go to a location. How do you go about handling that upfront investigation of trying to dig into the history?
Oh, well, that's a great question. So multiple team members do different things each time. Several of us usually dig into the history and then pop up with what we find on our own. We usually go out to a location to make sure we're not being pranked, to make sure the people aren't too crazy. We also check around the area, sometimes talk to other people in other buildings, see what they've heard or experienced. we really dig into it a lot in advance, but we also do an interview at most locations so that the people running the venue or working at the venues can share their own personal experiences.
Do you think that belief in the paranormal makes you more vulnerable or more protected?
I think both simultaneously
Hmm.
because in some ways you're more protected because I think you have a heightened awareness of things potentially going on around you. And you're vulnerable because you're deliberately playing with things you don't understand.
So, one of the things that I have often urged on the podcast is not for people to take unnecessary risks and opening doors in which they do not understand. Are there any kind of like clear things that you absolutely will not do in order to help safeguard you and your team?
Oh, 100%. I'm very grateful for this question. Our team does extensive interviewing and training to be a part of it. And we have
Hmm.
a lot of rules in place. We never provoke. If someone provoked one time, they'd be kicked off the team. We haven't had that happen, but if someone did, they'd be kicked off the team. So we don't try and antagonize entities. I have noticed that a lot of teams that have claimed to have been followed home by something and harassed, other than some benign activity prior to an investigation or after an investigation, I find that a lot of those teams are somewhat provocative or disrespectful. That's one rule we have. We also agree as a team, we never let people isolate without the kind of like the whole team consent. Like if there's just some particularly bad vibes or heavier vibes, I'll make the call. I'll just be like, this doesn't feel like the type of location I want anyone isolating and investigating because on their own somewhere, because I wouldn't want someone to have a freak out that scarred them,
Hmm.
whether psychosomatic or genuine. And I wouldn't want people to have PTSD. That said, we have deliberately scared each other on a few times. Like, I don't know what's wrong with us. We don't want anyone scared by a ghost in a dark, sinister way, but we may do it to each other. So there's that. We have particular methods of like how we allow engagement. And we always thank the spirits. We always explain how the equipment works. And if something feels off, we retreat and how we do that on our team. And it seems to have been effective. This is coming into the 13th year, maybe 14th in October. And I've never had anyone just say, hey, my house is possessed because of this or anything like that. I'm not saying there's never a bump in activity directly after an investigation, but we are very careful to thank the spirits for their time. And if, let's just say, like even at the Hand and Playhouse, where I told you previously about the room where we all had to leave and turn a light on. We walked out of the room and we turned back and we're like, okay, we know you're there. Thank you for your time. You stay there and we're going elsewhere in the building. So we try and just draw a
Hmm.
boundary. And in my experience, vocalized boundaries work. Like including like when we've had bumps of activity in our homes. Let's just say Tally and I are here editing something and there's a knock on a wall. I'll turn around and go, okay, that's really fun while Tally's here, but if you do it when she's not here, I'm coming through the whole house with sage and you're going to be bound elsewhere. And so our team like sets up boundaries. And you know what? My experience is they respect them.
That is a really smart approach. And I really love that answer. So, you mentioned that there's training. How did you come up with that training to begin with? I would just love a peek into the methodology of the process that you went through to come up with some of these ground rules.
Well, some of the ground rules were just instinctive and they were ground rules I had for myself going into it. And so I
Hmm.
put them forward to, especially because I'm bringing nieces and nephews, and sometimes not, you won't always see it like on our channel, but I have younger nieces and nephews participating and stuff, and my own foster daughter and things have participated. I'm very careful with the methods. Some of it was looking things up, some of it was watching mistakes other teams did over the years, some of it
Hmm.
was instinct. And at our trainings, we try and make sure people know how to use their gear appropriately. We have a couple venues. I don't want to say them because I don't want people bothering the venues to get in use
Oh, yeah.
them. Yeah, I just want to be respectful, but we have 2 venues that what welcome us back regularly to do our team trainings, and so we'll bring people. They're haunted locations, and so you're almost guaranteed, not necessarily guaranteed, but almost guaranteed some level of activity throughout the night. So we'll take them there and we'll show them, look, at you always need to be in a camera, and you should be in a camera with your team member so people don't think another team member did X if a camera fails. You never abandon a teammate is one of our strongest rules. So if someone's feeling scared, you don't get to isolate that night. If someone's actually feeling just spooked out, unless that person always has a partner, no one's isolating. We go with what the team's needs are. Kind of came up with it over time by learned experiences, watching methods that worked when we did it, watching methods that we didn't respect when we saw them on TV or YouTube channels, and going, well, how can we do this a little better then?
That is perfect. And the fact that you seem to be following the number one rule that's always violated in classic horror movies to split the party.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying we never isolate. I've isolated with activity at the Vintage Cafe, but it felt positive. No one was spooked out. We were all like in a great mood, and we're also, our team won't isolate like leaving someone in a building. Well,
Right.
that's not true. Trina like literally has done buildings by herself. She's very brave. I wouldn't do that. We usually are. One of our rules for isolation is you have a walkie-talkie with you, and that there has to be someone who can get to you within under a minute, so that no one's like freaked out and traumatized. You have to be in a good frame of mind that night, and the energy has to feel like positive and interactive, as opposed to like the hand and playhouse where it felt at least one room dark. So we're very careful with kind of identifying what's taking place.
That sounds like a very solid approach to me. And the fact that you haven't encountered any major attachments or negative things after one of these investigations seems to be a very solid kind of game plan that you've had that's been working. And I love that. That's exactly what you want to hear.
Yes. And like I said, I'm not saying we've never had a bump in activity. Like a couple days before and a couple days after a lot of investigations, there's a bump. Or sometimes I think when spirits get excited, when we're actually going through evidence, sometimes we're all together in a room and on different devices and look what I found, kind of going through them at the same time. And we've had a couple things happen during that, but it feels like excitement as opposed to oppression.
What is the most active location that you have ever investigated?
I think hands down the Kent Historical Museum, closely followed by this place on the Tulalip Indian Reservation, the one I told you the ranger escaped from.
Hmm.
Terrified. That place is pretty lit too, but I think hands down the Kent Historical Museum.
I can only begin to imagine. What is the biggest misconception the public has about what paranormal investigators actually do?
Well, right now, I think the biggest misconception is that we all use apps and that we're using ghost apps, walking around, seeing what our cell phones can produce and calling them ghosts. So that's a more recent misconception. But and also I want to clarify, I'm not saying a ghost can't talk through an app. I think they can. Like, the right kind of spirit could probably manifest anything. It could. And when people say, don't use Ouija boards, they're evil. And I'm like, well, talking to a ghost, what's the difference? I could put a spoon on the table and say, move it. Is that a Ouija board now? But, what you really want to avoid is making the public think you don't know what you're doing. The biggest public misconception prior to, I think, apps was just that people stage everything. And
Hmm.
sadly, I think people stage everything because people accidentally don't use gear appropriately. And including us, we were guilty of that, especially in our earlier stuff. We had to like learn from our own mistakes and correct ourselves and own that, hey, that EMF in that first video, that should have never been in the footage because there's electricity at the location. So there's things we had to learn ourselves. But I think that the biggest public misconceptions are that people stage everything or that all of us are out there just using cell phone apps. And I think not doing things appropriately can give real intelligent paranormal investigation a bad name, which is why scientists and physicists don't want to be involved.
Well, that is true. I mean, people are usually in it more for the vibes than for anything else. And I could definitely color perspectives a good bit, unfortunately.
Hmm.
Have you ever had to debunk a haunting and found out something even stranger was going on?
Oh, yes, actually. So I think I might have mentioned this in passing, like in one of our earlier conversations, but there's a location we went to in Snohomish. It was a private residence, and they invited us out to their location. And on the phone, the woman, I'm leaving names out of this for
Yep.
protection of the person and not to talk smack, but this woman called and said that her and her family and her children had been oppressed by all kinds of evil spirits and ghosts. And initially on the phone, my first thought was a lot of people think that ghosts are evil spirits. And so I'm just like listening, like, we're probably going to come out and find some piece of history here and no big deal. Long story short, we did schedule a walkthrough and we're in the process of scheduling an actual lockdown. They were going to leave and go to a hotel and we were going to have their home for a weekend. And when I got to the house, a combination of experiences occurred. First, I will say that I do believe the place has some serious haunting, and I believe a lot of it's tied to the mother. Like, and I also think she stages things. I think it's one of those weird combinations. Like, you wouldn't even have to stage it. This place is definitely haunted. But she was not a trustworthy person. Her children seemed scared of her, which we noticed within minutes of getting there.
Oh, God.
But they were artifacts traders. And you're talking about, and it's an old house. It was an 1800s home. I think it had been a church. And I think, I'm trying to remember all the things that had been, but the house had been like things before it was even a livable home. It wasn't made to be a home. It was like a barn, then a church, and all sorts of things. This was quite a while ago, so I'm trying to jog my memory. Floor to ceiling throughout the house are these like weird, creepy paintings that are clearly like demonically intended paintings, like old ones too, like the vintage kind. And I'm like, why would you put this in the space that you live? And so we walk in and we're like just weirded out by the vibe itself. We're just like, what in the world is this? And she's talking about her children having nightmares all the time and these ghosts and demons. And pretty soon these stories start expanding into her telling us about a husband of hers that has died, a child of hers that has died, a child of hers that might be dying. And I'm getting this like very Munchausen's syndrome vibe that's freaking me
Yeah.
out. Like, you can't prove it, you can't call CPS, but there is something freaking wrong. And everyone on the team is feeling it. And there's this room where one of her sons who had died used to stay in. And she has this like weird picture that he painted before he died that looks like, I think it was like a demonic version of himself above the bed. And there's other children in the room and they're terrified of it. Like, other than being sadistic, why in the world would you allow your children to have something other than love and pleasantry in their room?
Yeah.
Right? You want a room. At the end of the day, regardless of what we believe, we put forth who we want to be. We create the living spaces we want to live in. We create the experience for our children until they're capable of creating our own. And this was, they are artifacts traders. So there's like in the house, they have like artifacts from all around the world, native artifacts, antiques, all sorts of things. And I could feel the haunting when I walked inside. And we were only in there like 2 or 3 minutes and I heard a, and so, I was wearing my earphones that we wear. So our team likes to hear our EVPs in real time because then it
Yep.
shows an audience, like, then we have the ability instead of like playing something back and, it's hard to prove it was there. We choose to wear enhancers so we can just go, we just heard this. And then when you play it back for an audience, they know you heard it in real time, and so that's something we do. And I heard this like weird disembodied breath. And I was just kind of like, I look over at, I think it was Terry who was there. And she and I are just like looking at each other like, what was that? And so we go into this child's bedroom I told you about. And finally, we got the family out of the house. It took a few minutes. But when I asked the deceased son if he missed, the response we got in an EVP was hate the bitch. And I just felt bone chilled. I was like, what was that? It was really, really weird. Ultimately, we didn't
Wow.
do the investigation. We debated calling Child Protective Services, but realized we didn't have any evidence. It's like, hey, these people are creepy. You should check on their children. But, We didn't see any actual abuse. I did question things she said, like, just before you got here, an apple was thrown, wasn't it, kids? And the kids are like looking down at the floor, skittish. I'm like, well, we saw an apple at the other end of the table where it shouldn't be. And you could tell they're like, it was absolutely a scripted scenario.
Right.
But I can also tell you the place was absolutely haunted and at a level we wouldn't investigate. We want to go talk to like spirits, dimensions, entities, aliens, whatever that are friendly, but I have no intention of deliberately entertaining evil.
I cannot say that I blame you. That combined with the odd vibes of Munchausen by proxy, and yeah, there is way too much going on to be unpacked by a set of individuals there for one purpose and one purpose only. So completely understand. I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole either.
Yes.
Um,
But you also said you'd burn Hector. I think that made my day.
how do you and your team feel at investigations, and how do you feel after those investigations?
Okay, so
'Cause I know that you mentioned adrenaline before and the conjovial feelings that you have, but yeah, I'm just really curious to delve into that.
I think I feel curious. I think we feel curious. The history of the locations we're going into is always one of our hot points to get, into. Hearing the history from locals, venue owners, plus what we've looked up online. You're like on for a ride walking back in time, whether you find activity or not. And so I think it starts with curiosity and the adrenaline builds throughout the night. And then after an investigation, sometimes you have a little bit of like saging to do, and you're usually really tired. But for the next couple days to couple weeks, it's us calling each other back and forth. I just found this. I just found that. Did you hear this? Oh, do you remember that? And because these are nieces, nephews, close friends, and family, they're new core memories every single time. And so for me, and I know I'm speaking for the team when I say this because everyone has said it at some point, these are some of the best memories of our life, at least in the way we do it. I know not all teams have that. And we also have a camaraderie. We're not high drama. We really enjoy each other's company.
And I couldn't imagine doing something and not loving it.
Right?
And I can hear that passion in your voice, and that just makes me trust you even more. The good thing is that, we've had multiple conversations before we got to this point. I have always walked away from them like feeling more and more confident that yes, this is a true up and up individual. And yeah, everything I've heard has only reinforced that fact more. So, and that is one of the ultimate pieces to this that really inspires trust in not only who you are as an individual, but your methodologies and how you go about it.
Well, I really appreciate that. We've been asked to be on other podcasts, and our team's actually on the shy side. Like, as much as we make our videos, a lot of those are made for our memory, but also, we're having fun, and it's good for the younger ones to have like a way to send it to their friends and things. But we've actually said no to a lot of things. One time we were asked to be on a particular travel channel show, and some of that was more just about our views on how those programs are managed, at least at that time.
Mhm.
We were kind of like, and kind of steered away from it. Plus, we didn't feel like we had our feet on the ground where we would want to be at that time. But when I've watched your various podcasts, I've always felt entertained and like you have a very open mind and you try and cover every facet you can think of. So I appreciate that about you as well.
Oh, I greatly appreciate that. Thank you very much. Are there any location types that you believe are more likely to be haunted or have spiritual attachments to them than others?
Yes, at least in our experience. And I haven't got to go to every imaginable location, of course,
Mhm.
but I think museums hold so much history and there's often so much positive and negative energy tied to various artifacts. I found museums to be very haunted locations. Also, theaters seem to be very haunted consistently. Not exactly sure why. Maybe it's the joy or the creativity released into the air, but most old theaters I've been to reported haunted. We recorded activity at that in museums. places that I know you have to start when you start investigating, like cemeteries, hit and miss, and I don't know that dead people party where their bodies are buried. We've hit a few historical ones, and we've had one or two that we captured some sort of evidence at. Even if restaurants are haunted, there's very few you can successfully investigate because the machinery is so loud. And so there's very few we're willing to do. But museums, they're really quiet. They're often in quiet areas and pretty easy to investigate and have a lot of history tied to them. And theaters are hit and miss. You want to pick the ones in small towns.
That makes total sense. I never would have thought of theaters to be top of mind, but now that I think about it, there are a phenomenal amount of not just like paranormal investigators that I've seen go to theaters, but also just shows and movies that are set in theaters that are about this particular topic. But
Yeah, putting
museums,
forth the energy into them, right? Into the very walls.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and for museums, I can understand how that would be top of mind. In fact, I've had author Anna Maria Manello on the program a few times, and she's written a phenomenal book, and I might butcher the name of it, and if so, forgive me, but it's Haunted Artifacts, and it's all about people will go to an antique shop, they will buy a particular piece, they'll bring it home, and then chaos erupts after the fact. And it's just, yeah, that's one of the many reasons. Well, that and I don't have the money for it, but yeah, I don't do antiquing. So
Okay, that's hilarious. I don't really collect antiques either, but that's probably just because I'm too broke.
I'm right there with you on that one. Actually, on that front, and I know we've touched on this a little bit with Hector, but have you experienced something that followed you home? And if so, how did you handle it?
So I don't feel like I've had something that followed me home in a way where I felt haunted in particular. All of the team who's investigated regularly has had some experience at some time after an investigation, but it's usually like a one off and usually really close to an investigation occurring. We have an experience with a piece of gear that is interesting. So one of our spirit boxes. So remember me telling you earlier in the episode, I don't know which episode, I know this might be two episodes, but earlier, one of our conversations today, we talked
Mhm.
about the Mount Baker Hotel. And I told you that, that place stuck with me because of the wall knocking. You're like, what sticks with you afterwards? And I mentioned the sounds
Yep.
sonically there. Well, downstairs in their basement, which was also where we recorded the sound of like something coming thundering down the stairs, we had the spirit box on and it had made like these weird clacking sounds, like just going clack and then like stopping, whipping through the channels and just making this weird, like loud clack. And it's hard to display to an audience because there's only so many dB being allowed in through the process that goes out to you on camera in the room. It was sonically loud and it was intense. And if we were kind of like looking at each other, like, what is the sound that the spirit box is making? And then I just had this hunch that whatever entity was there didn't like it, couldn't speak through it, and perhaps wanted it off. So I said, "Do you not like this? Do you want us to turn it off?" We try and be really sensitive to what spirits want because if they're interacting with us, we want to be respectful. Some spirits love it, some spirits hate it, and we try and match vibe. So I'm like, "Do you want us to turn it off?" And clear as day, this voice goes off, like almost like sing songs it. And I can't
Wow.
remember if it happened once or twice. You can check out the video. It's been a while. But when we watched it back, here's another interesting thought about it. We're not 100% certain that it wasn't a disembodied voice in the room. I can't tell if it came through the spirit box itself or if it was in the room because we didn't hear the bands do that typical break, when the voice comes through. It sounded it was so loud, it was practically disembodied. It could have been through the spirit box. But okay, so now 6 months later was our next investigation. It was over at the Kent Historic Museum that we told you about. And so
Mhm.
the ghost experiences at Kent Historic Museum, totally different vibe, definitely different spirits, just clarifying this, different manifestations, different gear being used for the most part. But at one part of the night, we had the spirit box out and we'd had a few clear replies. And then it was quiet for a while. And then someone on the team, I think Trina and Tally said they thought they heard an off. And it was you can actually see me on the footage that's out for the Historic Museum. It's on TikTok, and the full episodes are on our YouTube. I take out my enhancers because I realize I've missed something that they heard, and I'm like, off? Where, in here? And they're like, yeah, they thought they heard an off. So I said, okay, do you want this off? Same exact voice, 100% that we heard at the Mount Baker Theater, or sorry, the Baker Hotel,
Mhm.
says off, and then it does, either the same one or a different one like says off right afterwards. So we got two. I haven't actually gone back through the Mount Baker Hotel footage to see if it said it twice. Then it's just been a while, so the investigations eventually blend in my brain. But
Yep.
it was the same voice at the next look. 100%, it was the same voice. So
Wow.
that, I mean, it followed us there somehow.
That's amazing. And the fact that, because, yeah, I can understand what you're saying. The fact that it didn't have that normal break in the conversation that you would hear normally through a spirit box, but the possibility that it could have been an audible voice is also fascinating to get that in two different locations.
Well,
That's fascinating.
now the difference, the only difference that I can tell is that at Kent, you could hear the bands break. So it definitely sounded like the offs came through the spirit box at
Okay.
at Kent. I'm not certain that that's how it happened over at Baker. It was kind of like it was trying to use it, couldn't figure it out, got annoyed with it, and was like, turn it off. And so, one thing that didn't make the actual final takes from the Kent episode was like, this is one of the outtakes that goes in our Just For Us folder. Was we were in another part of the building, a very active scene where a poltergeist threw something. And I think it's in the second episode we did. And we pulled out the spirit box during that time. And at some point, once again, we heard randomly, not asking for it, just randomly, the same girl say off. And so it like clearly doesn't like the spirit box. And then so we said, okay, we can hear you. We recognize your voice from before. Would anyone else other than the girl from Mount Baker Hotel like to tell us to turn the spirit box off? And then the sad thing was we never heard from her again. And so we're like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have said that.
Oh, I don't think I've ever felt sorry for a spirit before, but that would definitely qualify. Second to last question for you.
All right.
What keeps you in the field after all these years? Is it curiosity, belief, adrenaline, or something else I didn't account for?
What keeps me in the field is the history and the adrenaline. It's addictive, and honestly, that I'm doing it with nieces, nephews, family, close friends. I mean, it's bonding experiences. It goes on for weeks, right? We're jiving off this for days and weeks afterwards, and also the hope that as a team someday we might be able to come up with a piece of gear that could prove to people who are actively participating with us that these spirits or intimate entities from other planes exist. And so
Mhm.
we hope to get a scientist or physicist or engineer on board who can help us eventually get to a point of discovery. If not, we're going to enjoy this occasionally till the day we die and just do the best we can together, because this is about, I think, relationship for us. Well, definitely is for us, it's a bonding experience. The travel, the excitement, all of it, the singing on the road, sharing our experiences. I really hope that I can do this for the rest of my life, but I hope that we can figure out answers. And also, I mean, we meet some really cool people. We also meet some serious weirdos. And and that makes, how are we even going to edit this one? I mean, those conversations happen, you have a genuinely haunted venue, but you have someone who's maybe a little too quirky to even interview, and you're just like editing as tight as possible, but all of that makes it fun.
Yeah, I will say that when I started this venture, the one piece I never expected to mean more to me than it does are the connections with people that I have forged along the way. And yeah, I could see that. And the fact that you're able to bring in nieces and nephews and, other family into this mix and enjoy it with them along with some very close friends. That just sounds like the dream that you're living right there.
Yeah, we're not looking for anything more than that. We don't. If we can if we accidentally figure out how to like prove ghost exists to the skeptic, then that'd be slick and that'd be a different conversation. But the truth is, we're doing this for the relationship with one another, for the memories, and for trying new things, experimenting as we go to see what we can come up with, and it's all fun.
All right, very last question. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you really wish that I did?
I feel like you asked some great questions. Let me see. Give me a second to think on this one.
Yeah.
Okay, ask me where I'd like to go that we haven't been.
All right, answer that question. Where would you like to go that you haven't been?
I want to go to the really creepy clown motel in Nevada.
Ooh.
And I might regret it afterwards.
That sounds like a trip and a half right there.
I know that multiple people on our team would like to go there, and I'm sure I'll be scared to death because I'm actually terrified of clowns. So I'm not exactly sure why I want to go, but it's a place that I'm fascinated with going to. I've seen a couple investigations done there online. I'd like the experience. I don't want to be alone. No isolation.
I can't say as I blame you on that one. If people are interested in finding you and your videos and your teams, how can they do that?
Oh, sure. You can look us up at TeamHauntParanormal.com. You can connect with us through YouTube or through TikTok. And you can write us at teamhaunt@yahoo.com. So there's lots of ways people can reach out and connect with us. And we're really personable, and we're respectful of the locations we go. And one thing that we don't do that I'd like to put out there is we're not some sort of ghost removal team. We come to measure things and not to bind them or cast them out. And we have varying spiritual perspectives on our team, and a lot of us are atheist or agnostic. There is a Christian on our team, there is a Catholic on our team, there's others religions on our team, but for the most part, our team is on the agnostic-y atheist side of things. So we're just there to measure and document and tell locations history. And if people are interested in that and they believe they have a haunted location, please reach out to us. We would love to come. If we find evidence, we tend to make a video. We don't give a timeline for releasing our videos because we're all hobbyists. We don't get paid. We do it at our leisure, but we think we do a pretty good job for the locations that have us out.
I would say that that is a bit of an understatement. Everyone out there, go watch their YouTube channel, check out their TikTok. We have become fast friends on TikTok. I can say that proudly, and I'm very
We
happy
become
about
fast
that.
friends, period. I respect you so
Yes,
much, JJ.
it's the same thing here. And I know that this is going to be the first in many conversations that we will have down the road. At least I hope so, from my own selfish perspective. But anyway, Chelsea, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to speak to us today, to share with everyone who is listening about your experiences, your viewpoints, everything. And the fact that you take this so seriously, but you still treat it as a source of bonding and camaraderie. That is the perfect blend, at least in my mind.
Oh, well, thank you. It was an honor. I'd give you a heart, but my hands make apples. And
Yeah, there's so many different ways. Like nowadays, kids are just doing that, and
what
I
is
don't
that? What
understand
is that
that.
supposed to be? I'm so confused.
It's supposed to be a sideways heart. So
Okay.
instead of doing that, they do that instead, and I'm like, okay, that's beyond me. Okay, have fun.
Thank
I'm
you
not
so
hip
much.
enough
It
to
was
pull
just
that off.
it was joyful. I really appreciated our time.
I did too. And everyone out there, follow along with Chelsea and Team Haunt Paranormal. I guarantee you will not regret that. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact them. I'll have their information in the show notes. And if you don't want to do that, then feel free to contact me either on our Discord channel or through Patreon or off from southerndemonology.com. And I'll make sure that any relevant inquiries are forwarded over. Thank you all. And as always, stay safe out there. Thank you for listening to Southern Demonology. Find us online at southerndemonology.com, which offers links to all of our social media and episodes. Southern Demonology is solely owned, produced, and edited by myself, and the intro and outro music are composed by me as well. If you have a moment, please rate, like, and share this podcast, as it is the best way to help support my work. As always, I am JJ, and it has been a pleasure to speak to you today.